All right, welcome back to the Onebar and Lupagus show. We got a fantastic show for everyone today. We have one of the best players to ever put on that beautiful shade of purple. 1973 Offensive Rookie of the Year, four-time Pro Bowler, four-time All-Pro, five-time Pro Bowler, Vikings Ring of Honor member of the 50 greatest Vikings, and should be Hall of Famer. And I'm missing a bunch more accolades. But Chuck Foreman is in the house. Chuck, thanks for hopping on, baby.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. We're going to roll with some questions we have for you. But first of all, we actually got some questions from our viewers. We're going to throw at you first here. So the first batch will be from some viewers.
Yes. We got T-Bass. T-Bass, who I know loves Chuck Foreman. Mm-hmm. Probably more than I know he loves you more than he loves us. But he says, first off, I'd love to thank Chuck for all the great memories. Watch him when I was young. His question is, how great was that offensive line you ran behind? He feels that it was overlooked because of that defensive line.
Oh, certainly it was overlooked. And, you know, any runner will tell you, running back, receiver, you know, a runner receiver like I was, it's what's up front that counts. I mean, they are the guys that set the tone for how your running game is going to go. We fortunately had some like Ed White, there's Mick Tinglehall, Ben White, Ron Yeri, Chuck Goodrum, and when I first got here, a guy by the name of Grady Alderman. He wasn't the biggest guy, but those guys were savvy. They were tough and experienced. So I got in my era anyway. The linemen weren't as big as they are now, but. Yeah, it's those guys that give you an opportunity to showcase your skill set, and that's what's missed a lot of times when we talk about these great running backs. Hey, they wouldn't even be able to showcase those skills if, in fact, they didn't have a line up there giving them that opportunity. So when you're building football teams, as for me, I believe on the inside out. And you give me two offenses, or an offensive line and a defensive line, you can do some great things.
Nice. We got one here from Camps. He just says this: why number 44?
Well, to be quite honest with you, my number was 32 when I was at Miami. Oscar Reed had that number, so I had to change up. And since my last name is Foreman, and then I said, okay, 44. Okay, I'll take Foreman, 44. That's how I thought to grab that number. But then they were guys saying, don't take that number, don't take that number. I'm like, why not? Because I guess there was a guy here prior to me that was the #1 draft choice that was number 44. And I guess he was kind of a character. Yeah.
It worked out well.
To say the least, it didn't work out well.
Yeah.
Well, it looked great on you. We got one from Leonard. He says, has Fran Tarkenton ever personally thanked you for pumping up his stats?
Well, why you throwing me on the spot like that? I think Fran appreciated all that I brought to the game, no doubt.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. More than that, my mother, Fran was really cool with my mother, so he got a pass on everything.
All right, Chuck, you are still very involved with the Vikings land, doing signings, events, etc. When it comes to the team itself, and how invested are you in the wins and losses? Do you get riled up after a Vikings win, or upset after a loss?
Well, I don't get upset about any of that, or win, loss. I generally just see how the season's going to go, and then I want to see them at least get in the playoffs and be competitive to win a playoff game at least. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. I don't go one way or the other during the course of the season. Like you, I'm sure when I see play that's not up to par, I certainly don't like that. But, I just take it a game at a time and hope they can put it together and have a winning season.
Sounds like us when we watch the games.
You're not losing any sleep over a tough loss is what you're saying?
No, not at all.
Lucky. So Bud Grant, legend, we all know the legend around Bud Grant, but I want to talk about Jerry Burns. So Jerry Burns, like, we all see the clips of him going off, which is fantastic. When I started watching Vikings football, it was late 80s, so I got to get a little bit of glimpse of Jerry Burns. But I mean, how underrated is he as far as that Vikings offense? How big of a part of it? And was he really like that off camera too? Because he seems fantastic.
Well, most of it was X-rated when he said stuff.
My boy Jerry.
I can't begin to tell you, but I think his creativity offensively, obviously, was the way it was before anybody else was doing it. You know, they called our offense, but it was the West Coast offense. They got the credit for Jerry Burns and our offense. So Jerry was a kind of guy that, you know, because I played fullback here, and and the only thing I know is nobody played fullback the way we did it here. Nobody ever. And so they incorporated the fullback, unlike any other, you know, the fullback had that reputation of, you know, the tough 1 yard guy, but they changed all that because our best plays for me to come off the ball, because I got off the ball pretty quick, and to take advantage of that, they moved me to the fullback. Because when we go off tackle, or then we had a read, like a lead, you know, like a lead play, I could read it all up and down the line. So that gave me an opportunity to do a lot of different things. So I think Jerry and Bud, you know, they were creating that offense for my skill set was pretty cool.
You know, so you kind of answered the first part of this question already, but like, how do you think that would translate today's game? I mean, do you think this offense you guys ran would be successful in today's NFL?
Well, today's NFL is what we did. So of course we would excel at it. I mean, we were way before our time, and that's what I'm saying. How can I put it? I think I heard a guy say one time that we changed the concept of football from the fullback position. And I have to agree with that. Those guys put that thing together, and nobody did it like we did it. And we don't get credit for doing it. And all the things that we do, or for me as a fullback, is just like they look at just the running part of it. They don't look at the total package. And so, you know, they forget the fact that I scored a lot of touchdowns and had a lot of yards and led the league in receiving 1 year coming out of the backfield. That part of my game is like put aside. And they don't even consider that when they evaluate me as a player. I mean, hey, listen, during my era, there are 4 guys in the Hall of Fame that have close to my stats, but I have never even been mentioned or put on the list to mention to be in the Hall of Fame. Now, being in the Hall of Fame, well, all right, that's the way it goes, but to not even be mentioned during the players of my era, now that's, to be quite honest with you, that's heartbreaking. So
absolutely.
This game is kind of crazy, but, you know, we set the standard, and of course we could, in today's game, boy, we'd have a great time.
Yeah, not only the stats. I mean, you revolutionized the running back position. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that, you, like you said, you guys don't get credit for. The offense, the way you use a running back. You had 73 receptions.
Right.
I mean, that was insane back then.
Yeah, it was. It was, like I said, it changed the game. Nobody ever looked at it or gave it credit. You know, they just look at you from the line of scrimmage. But all the other skill sets that I had, or whoever played it, you know, that's kind of like not even a consideration, which is crazy.
Do you watch today's game knowing, like, back then you were made for today's football? Do you watch these guys today and just be like, man, if I was out there, I would be lighting them up?
There's no question that, you know, if I were playing today, I could excel at the game. But, you know, it is what it is, and I'm happy to see that these guys are finally getting their due and respect for being multi-purpose. Well, let's call it a hybrid back, because now you better be able to run it and you better be able to catch it. And in order to do that, you better be able to pick up a blitz so you can be in there on third down. So, you know, the one-dimensional back is not, it might be obsolete. There's only 1 or 2 guys that what's his name? Henry, that's with Baltimore now.
Mm-hmm.
I think is that who it is?
Yep, Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry. Yeah. Have you ever seen that guy?
Yeah.
He makes us look like little boys.
He looks like a lineman. but you know, he might be one of the last that excel like that. You know, so now you got to be able to catch, you got to be able to run, and those guys are now starting to get paid, and they want to be identified as a receiver, but I can also run.
Yep.
You see, so it's different.
And Chuck, you got a website, chuckforeman44.com. It keeps up with your events, everything that you're doing, and you're a busy guy, man. You're a busy guy.
Well, I ran into this young man, Ben Tice, and he talked me into it because let me tell you, I'm scared of the social media thing. I don't know one thing about it. I'm learning about it. And so like I gave him, I just let him run with it, trust him, you know, to run with it right. And he does a great job. Him and his guys that work with him, they do a great job. So yeah, it's been pleasantly, you know, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, Ben's a good dude. We're going to be teaming up with him with Tailgate Spices this season, giving away some of those. We can't wait to do that. Appreciate again you taking the time. I want to ask you quick about the draft. So back in the draft, you were drafted 12th overall the first round, but there was 17 rounds.
Right.
So did you know where you're going? Did you just get a random phone call? Did you know the Vikings were interested, or was it just like a guessing game?
No, you know, in my time, you know, the scouts used to come to the school, you work out, and you know, you do the workouts that they had. Of course, for me, leaving Miami, I went to the All-Star games. Every one of them I was the MVP at, and so they saw a little bit of me there. But then, of course, you know, when they came to your school and they measured your jump and all that kind of stuff. But that's where it went. And then when I went to the Senior Bowl, of course, that's the big-time All-Star game back in my time. And then that's when I really got the idea that I was going to be drafted. I didn't know how high I was going to go, but I did know that when I was in all those All-Star games and I saw these guys that were big-time All-Americans, and I'm like, wow, he can't play with me. You know what I mean? And so that's when I realized that, boy, if you get the right PR behind you, you can create anybody. They were good, but, you know, I'm like, I knew I could play.
Yeah.
That's how I found out I could play with these guys. Because, you know, Oklahoma, Texas, all those guys were big time. Yeah.
For you, what was the toughest transition going from Miami to the NFL? What was the hardest adjustment for you?
Actually, I had a pretty easy go of it because we had a very mature professional football team up here when I got here. Those, you know, all the guys here were good. They were very serious about their job. They came. It was like I said, professional. It wasn't just pros. They just knew how to do what they had to do to win. And of course, Bud Grant liked to have experienced guys. And if you were a young guy coming in here, you better not make mistakes because you wouldn't get on the field. And so I think that's one of the things in my career here in Minnesota that really helped me. We had a lot of not only experienced guys, but just some really good people.
Speaking of good people in the team, I mean, we know about all of the high-profile names and everything. Was there anybody on those teams that you played on that you felt just didn't get as much love as they should have? Maybe an underrated guy?
Oh, I don't know. We had everybody knew their roles on the team. I think it was just. I don't think it was more of an individual, recognition thing with our team. Even though we knew we had like great Alan Page, we had Fran, we had Carl. You go on the offensive line and run. You can go all up and down the roster. We had a lot of good guys, but I don't think we even really thought about, that. We always thought that each of us had a job, regardless of what it was, and you did it to the best of your ability. And so I don't think there's anybody that – I think everybody surpassed what they thought they could be, I think, you know. Because we have – you know, even if you had to run down on a kickoff and you had to stay in your lane, you did that great. You know, that was rewarded. You know, it was different.
Mm-hmm. We got a couple more quick ones for you, but I got to know, was there a guy that you played against on opposing teams that you just dreaded seeing on the defensive side of the ball?
I'll tell you one guy that I played against that just was kind of like a nuisance. Or you ever been around a bunch of gnats where you just can't get rid of them? Jack Ham from Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I could get rid of him when I was coming out to run a pattern on him or something like that. But he just always seemed to be around. He was good. You know, he might catch the ball, but he was right there. I like playing against. I only played against him a few times, but he's one of the guys that I remember. That, you know, even when I came out of the backfield and started doing my thing on him, boy, you know, I just couldn't just really just get rid of him. Most of the guys I could just get rid of, but he was just like, he was always around. And then Fred Carr too with the Green Bay Packers. He was like big as a defensive lineman, but he could run like a running back.
Nice. We just want to get your opinion, Chuck, on just the way the NFL has evolved, the game it is today. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's, you know, well, besides the money, it's evolved. It's the game is, of course, is more of a passing type game now. And that's why you have these multi-purpose players, you know, running back, receiver, and wide receivers. But yeah, I like the game today. It's more wide open. It's exciting. Everybody's got a chance to win. I'm glad they cleaned up some of the, you know, the tackling, how they can tackle and all that type of stuff. Because, you know, it used to be they could just snatch you down. You know, they put that collar tackle. They used to do that all the time. And that was a dangerous way. But I like the way they cleaned the game up and made it exciting. I like the passing game. I like the running game too, but it's more on par, I think, most teams. Back in my time, we could go down the schedule and say, okay, we're going to win this one, we're going to win this one, we're going to win that, and this one might be tough. But the same teams were horrible every year. And New England was one of
them. One more for you. From Miami to come up to Minnesota, did you ever adjust to how cold it was in the games? Do you get to a point where all of a sudden that's such a huge advantage against the other teams, or is it just freezing ass cold regardless?
I'm from Maryland originally, so I had a little cold growing up, but going to Miami, being in 80, 90 degree weather every day and going to the beach and then coming up here to Minnesota, and the first really, really, really cold day at practice, Bud Grant, you know, the practice was over. I was a rookie, and he held me out. We were going to the playoff game. It was supposed to be like 20-something below zero. It was cold outside. And he told me to come and he wanted to talk to him. He just started throwing the ball to me, and I'm catching it, throwing it back to him. I'm like, what's all this about? And he's throwing it, and I'm catching it. And I'm getting upset. He threw it, and I throw it harder back at him. But the bottom line is he was getting me ready to play in that below zero weather. He kept me out there longer because I'm from Miami. I mean, coming from Miami, and he knew that I had to make that adjustment as far as how to hold the ball, how to run in that weather. You ran a little more flat-footed. And I learned that from Dave Osborne, Bill Brown, and Bud. Just the little things I needed to do to adjust to be successful in that cold weather. And believe me, we were cold, but we used to psych everybody out. He'd make us go out in pregame warm-up with just your jersey on and no shirt underneath. And I'm like, why is he doing that? And we'd go out and he says, just act like you, just a regular old practice. everybody's out there cold. Those other guys on the other teams, they had so much on that there's no way they could play with all that. You know, they had shirts like triple, you know, like 3 shirts on underneath, and he couldn't move. But you know, it was a method to his madness. It was psychological. So, you know, it was a plan type thing. But Bud knew what he was doing. Yeah.
All right, Chuck Foreman, the man, one of the most beloved Vikings ever. You were before our time, but the stories, the highlights, everything we see. I mean, everybody talks Chuck Foreman, and we are just tickled pink that you hopped on the show, man.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, that's a good thing. But, you know, sorry you missed it, fellas, but you saw it.
Yeah.
I wish I could have been in the locker room to hear Jerry Burns.
Yeah, right.
I would have loved to hear him.
X-rated.
Yeah, that would have been, if you were a fly on the wall in his meetings. Whew, even at me, I was shocked, to be quite honest.
All right.
Yeah, I could say some things, man. And when he called you out, and it wouldn't be just your name, he'd call you blankety blank blank, number so and so. What the blankety blank are you doing? And oh, it was hilarious.
Oh man, I love it. Chuck Foreman, 44.com. Upcoming events, you can see it. Awesome gear. Check it out. Chuck,
thank you guys.
love you, man. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank
Fantastic.
you. All right.